Although in general, the Fridays are we're learning Masechtas Brachas for an overview. This week, Parshas Lech Lecha, in the Torah is the mitzvah of Milah. And as a moil, I can't not seize the opportunity to speak about Milah. I would like to focus on one part of Milah, and that's METZIZA. The Mekoyer for doing METZIZA is a Mishnah in Shabbos, Kuf Lamed Gimel Amud Aleph. The Mishnah says, in Reb Lezer the Milah, when the Mishnah speaks about what you do on Shabbos, the Mishnah says, Oisen kol tzarche Milah b'Shabbos, moyalin upoirim, Milah priya, that's the ikka part of that's from the mitzvah Milah. And the Mishnah says, umoitzitzin, you do METZIZA. So Rashi explains, what's the chiddush in the Mishnah, umoitzitzin, that you do METZIZA. So Rashi, because really, when you do METZIZA, which the definition of METZIZA, moitzitz, to suck out the blood, when you do METZIZA, you're doing a chabura b'Shabbos. It's chilul Shabbos. Still, you do METZIZA on Shabbos. That's what the Mishnah Rashi explains. The Mishnah, you do METZIZA. Why do you do METZIZA if it's straight up chilul Shabbos? So the Gemara Namad Beis explains that you have to do METZIZA because it's a sakana. If you do not do METZIZA, it's a sakana, and mepnei sakana, it's doicha Shabbos. The Gemara says, Amar Papa, Hi Umna, this moyel that doesn't do METZIZA, the loy mayitz, he doesn't do METZIZA, sakana. It's a sakana for the baby if you don't do METZIZA. V'avrina lei, you have to send him away from his job. A moyel that doesn't do METZIZA, you have to send him off. So the Gemara says, Pshita, of course, the Mishnah says that it's Doicha Shabbos, obviously it's a sakana. So the Gemara says maybe it's not really an oifen, that it's not Chil Shabbos, but the Gemara says that if you don't do METZIZA, it's a sakana, you have to do METZIZA. Even though we see that the reason for METZIZA is mepnei sakana, which means Milah, the mitzvah's Milah, that's in this week's parsha, Lom, to mal a person's kid, that's Milah, as well as Priya, which we spoke about, I think last year actually, we went into the Chituch, the Milah, the Priya. But now afterwards, when you do METZIZA is just for the safety, mipnei refuah. Just like afterwards you put on a bandage, so that's not a part of the mitzvah. But you do it mipnei sakana to make sure that the baby doesn't overbleed. So too is also METZIZA. You do it mipnei refuah. However, I would like to share with you many mar makaimis, a few of them that say that METZIZA is part of the mitzvah. The Orach Chaim in Parshas Tazria on the pasuk Yimo B'Sar or Lasei, the Orach Chaim says, Ki tzorech lasois gimel dvarim b'mitzvahs Milah. The mitzvahs Milah is made out of three parts. First is Vehei Milah, Priya uMetziza. So the Orach Chaim says clearly that METZIZA is done because it's part of the mitzvahs Milah. The Meri Asad, a Talmud of the Chassam Sofer, in two places, Kach nitna halacha l'Moshe misinai milvat hamasakana, which means if you say it's a mitzvah, we're not dropping that there's also a sakana if you don't do METZIZA, but besides doing METZIZA mipnei sakana, you also have to do it. There's a mitzvah. How he says halacha l'Moshe misinai. Another place is lush, and this is in the Chuvas, uMetZIZA meguf hamitzvah gam zulas hasakana. So he says there's a mitzvah. Part of mitzvahs Milah to do METZIZA. In Shemesh Marper, Shamsham Rafael Hirsch, we're going to see he wrote a few chuvas when it came to METZIZA. He was strong in fighting the reform, and this was one of the things that they went on, which we're going to speak about soon. But when he speaks about the METZIZA, Aval Efsher, he says it more b'Torah, Efsher gam shahaMetZIZA. Besides it's done for a sakana, it's also part of the mitzvah. In Binyan Siyan, the Aruch Laner, V'ulai mipi Moshe Rabbeinu olav hashalom was given METZIZA. To bandage the baby wasn't halacha l'Moshe Messina. That you have to do, that's a practical. And Shlomo Zalman also, when he speaks about it, he says that it's sakana and mitzvah. What's the nafka mina if it's mipnei sakana or it's done, or there's also a mitzvah. Number one, in Derech Bekudecha, he brings Lagabi mitzvah ba yosim b'shluchai. There's some fathers that would want to do the chittich also, and most mo'ilim oppose it because if you don't know what you're doing, you can mess up. But interesting, Lagabi Metziza, which I haven't seen that a father should come in for Metziza, but if it's a mitzvah, you have mitzvah ba yosim b'shluchai. I'm not saying anyone should change anything, but if it's a mitzvah ba yosim b'shluchai, you should rather do it than rather making somebody else a shliach. As opposed to if it's mepnei sakana, why you do Metziza. So whoever takes care that there shouldn't be a sakana is very good. Another nafkamina, and this is brought, Rabbi Yashav writes in a Koivus Shuvas, and Rabbi Yashav says the following. These are halacha, tzitzin ha-ma'akvin, which means when you do the bris, and you left over a little bit, which is ma'akiv, the kid is still a oral. So even if you realize later on Shabbos, you go back. It's ma'akiv. Tzitzin she'ena ma'akvin, which means you want to do it, it's a hidur, but it's not ma'akiv in the milah. It was a kosher a bris. But chahai gavna, tzitzin she'ena ma'akvin, you don't go back. You don't go back on Shabbos to fix it. Even tzitzin she'ena ma'akvin, that you don't go back, but if you're still in the middle of the ma'isa milah, middle of doing the mitzvah, b'shas ma'isa, you could still go back. If you did the milah, you didn't do the priya, you could go back. Now this would be a clear nafkamina if the metzitza is a chelik of the mitzvah or not. If metzitza is part of the mitzvah, so if you did the milah, the priya, you didn't do metzitza yet, and you realize there's still a little bit to fix up, even though it's tzitzin and she'ena ma'akvin, but you're still in the middle of the ma'isa mitzvah, you would go back. However, if it's just done mepnei sakana, it's not part of the mitzvah. The reason why metzitza is done is just a practical mepnei sakana. So just like when before you put on the bandage, the milah is done. You have to put on a bandage of mepnei sakana, so you wouldn't be chayzer. For this nafkamina, the Chassam Sofer says clearly that metzitza is mepnei sakana, and mainly you're not chayzer metzitza and she'ena ma'akvin on Shabbos. Another nafkamina which I did not see anybody bring, but I would ask the olam, would be lagavi splitting it up to different moilim on Shabbos. If it's a pnei sakana, so anybody could take care of the sakana, just like the bandage. If the moil, somebody else is there that could do a better bandage, the other person could do it. As opposed to the mitzvah itself, there's a big shaila, milam priya, if you could split. Originally, it seems that the Chassam Sofer maybe did let two moil, he would do just pre on Shabbos, and a different moil did the thing that in the Middle East, he wrote a tshuva about it, seemingly he switched. So lagabi metzitza, l'chayr, which as we see clearly is, you being machal Shabbos, if it's a mitzvah, is vayti yeshal, if you could split it up, as opposed to if it's a sakana, anybody could do it. And then another, this is not so much an afkamina, but just what comes out is if it's a pnei sakana, we know chamira sakanta mi yisura. In Isser, these different ifanim, when to be makel, if it's a sakana, it's much more chamer.
Either way, there's only a mitzvah.
Aha, you have a good point. So say you're saying l'chayra mepnei sakana, a different moil could do it. Yeah, richtig, I hear. If you're only doing it out mitzvah, it's not very good. He's saying it's partially sakana. The only one that I was masupik that says in the Arachaim, he says mitzvah, but l'chayr it's partial, it's pnei sakana also. The others say gam pnei mitzvah. Yeah, richtig. You're right, Haka. So then l'chayr would be partial that someone else could do it also. It's the sakana part. Before moving into the what's in metzitza, so we have over here metzitza is pnei sakana. Many say that it's also pnei mitzvah. Just to share with you the Lashon, the Maram Shik, also a Talmud of the Chassam Sofer, that these other reasons as well. This is all that they're writing, and that's sad to move away, not to do metzitza, but they write, besides what we see in the Mishnah and the Gemara, that's Pnei Sakana, and we saw many that say that it's a mitzvah. The Maram Shik says, vada sakana she'iri chazal, kama taimim yesh oid metzitza. There's many other reasons also. Binyan si and miachriya me'eza tam that the Mishnah says to do, doesn't say, it just says you have to do metzitza. It doesn't say why you have to do metzitza. So it's not only sakana, we saw a mitzvah, there may be other reasons as well. Why do we do METZIZA? As we saw, it's Pnei Sakana. Meaning to say is, what do we accomplish with METZIZA? The Rambam, it's interesting to note that the Mishnah, when Rashi explains the Mishnah, the Gemara doesn't say how you do it, and therefore we have to understand what we're accomplishing exactly. The Rambam says, the Lashon HaRambam, Perek Beis of Hilchas Mila, when he goes through the tzura of doing the bris, and then when he goes to METZIZA, va'achakach moitzitz amila, ache yetze hadam b'mekoymes harachikim, kedei sheyavel lidei sakana. In other words, we want to accomplish with METZIZA to draw out the blood, not just the blood that's on top, but all deeper down as well, to take out that blood. The Lashon ache yetze hadam b'mekoymes harachikim, the Shulchan Aruch and Yeridei and Hilchas Mila, the Shulchan Aruch, the same bring is Matik the Rambam. I believe the first to say this is the Rambam. There's no earlier Makar. The Shulchan Aruch also of Achkach Moitzitz and Amila Achi Yetzi Adam Makaymes Arachoikim.
Technically, you can have an instrument.
Very good. Gavaldik. This is what we're getting to that right now. Very, very well brought up, Taka. Gavaldik. In what oifen do you do? But first, let's just see the accomplishment is to draw out the blood, and let's see in other ways if it helps as well or not. We're going to get to it. Very good, Gavaldik. I'm happy. I'm on the right track over here.
How could the Rambam is there any share of how do you know when it's going to come to affect him when you don't know? Like, how do you know?
That's a good shaila, Taka, and even up until today, I think the moila. It's not clear. You have to do it for maybe a second and a half. One thing it's not is not just to put, to do it for like a second, just put your mouth. That's for sure not, doesn't accomplish it. How much? What'd you say?
It has to be strong.
Strong, yeah. Has to be strong.
I'm saying lahavdil, but it's the electric pumps that ladies use when taking out milk. They have a specific pressure and a specific speed of the pump. A mouth, it also depends on the muscles and how it's done. Let's get back to this shortly. Oh, you're saying b'chlal how it's done, but we're talking about if these other methods also we're going to get to. The vailu, what it has to be accomplished to be moitzi b'makaymes harachikim. We haven't gone into what oifen how METZIZA is done, beper or other way, but the din METZIZA. Over the different generations, there was times that they wanted to be loichem amila and they attacked METZIZA, but oifen not to do METZIZA b'chlal. So, as we mentioned before, in Shemesh Marper, Shemesh Marfolish has two tshuvas about it. Number one, he goes clearly and he says that METZIZA, they wanted to say it's a sakana and germs could go over. So he says, a moil asked him that they gave him the job to do the mila, to do the bris. They gave him the opportunity, but they said al tanai that he doesn't do METZIZA. And he said it could be even they're not going to mal the kid. He said, listen, the responsibility of mila is on the father. It's not your responsibility. They want to make you a shliach. If they're asking you to do it without METZIZA, don't take it. Don't do the bris. He says chamira sakanta mi yisura. He also says that what they want to say that it's a sakana from the few what they know then at that time. He said milanu, like the times in Chazal, but even furthermore in the times in Chazal when Klal Yisrael was all together, there was thousands, much more brisset all together, and they had all the knowledge. And maybe if Chazal say to do it, umapnei sakana, you have to do it. So if you get it, you offer to do a bris without doing METZIZA, don't take the bris. Now he brings out an interesting point. You see that Chazal say different places in Gemara, it's different in Yoni Refuah, which change, and some Refuahs actually are different now. There's a Tosfos in Moed Katan. Tosfos says, Daf Yud Aleph, V'shemo nishtanu kama ha-refuah shebeshas. Oshan ha-Tosfos, that things change from when Chazal said in Yoni Refuah. But even more, very interesting, Reb Kivega in Hilchas Bikur Cholim, Reb Kivega says that all the Inyani Refuah that Chazal say, He doesn't say you're not allowed to do it, but you can't do it, but often that you're doing it because you want it to help. Because then, if it's not going to work, you're going to say Chazal don't know what they're talking about. He brings besides one refuah. One refuah, he says, clearly works even as manazeh. But al kaponim, you see that in Yoni refuah change. It changes. So maybe Lagavi Metzitza also, then Chazal said to do Metzitza Mepnei Asakana, but now it changed. So he says, no. And he's medayik like that even from the Rambam. When the Rambam speaks about the bandages, the Rambam says you can put a bandage. The Lashon HaRambam, the Lashon HaSpalonis, he says, Ukiyoytze b'hem, meaning to say is whatever works. And that you see from Dur L'Dur, it's changed. And even now, the place that I learned used to use one way, and he's been doing it many years, and they switched now again. So it's constantly changing, and everybody, you do how you're taught and what works. So why don't you say the same thing Lagabe Metzitza? So he says, Metzitza, first of all he says is that we don't know that it's different, that it changed. But more also, he says, as the Rambam himself says, by the bandage, you can do any type of bandage. By Metzitza, the Rambam says, you have to do it, so that's what you have to do. Reb Shlomo Kluger and Elif Locha Shlomo also has a very, very stark tshuva against those that wanted to stop Metzitza. Just quote a few words that he writes. He says, I'm writing this tshuva kadei l'das ma'lohashav lapikoiris. So he's very fire against those that want to stop Metzitza. Reb Shulei Diskin, also I'm going to read you the Lashon. 2 different letters that he wrote. Ma'oid roi v'nachin lehesirachik melichnois lamila kazeh. Stay away from doing a bris that doesn't do metzitza. And another letter he says, Musharf, v'mheiru b'yameinu yavel yo, who ulai maybe yimtza latar es amoyelim shala es the brisin, that the ones that had brisin without metzitza she'mutaram lecho b'pesach. Means maybe Eliyahu Navi is going to be mater these kids to be able to eat the Karm Pesach that didn't have metzitza. I guess so, because if it's only sakana, it's not a chatzi oral. Yeah, I hear. Good Moshe. And then the Maram Shik says another angle of also not against not doing metzitza, and he says al titish teres imecha. That's
The mitzvah is also not subject to change over time. That's what you were saying before.
right. If it's a mitzvah, so that's the mitzvah, yeah. Now we'll go in what oifen of doing metzitza, as we started speaking about it before. It's interesting to note, as I mentioned before, the Mishnah, the Gemara, Rashi doesn't mention, the Rambam doesn't mention anything about doing it bepeh. Doesn't say anything about doing it with your mouth. Metzitza is mepnei sakana. You have to remove the blood that's there.
You could say it was a double portion, but with metzitza, they didn't have the Gemara. They didn't have to say it. It was a double portion. You might with the fair.
Why is it a davar pashat?
They had instruments.
They had instruments, wooden stuff, metal stuff.
If you look at Shifra and Pua, they used an instrument to suction the mouth and the nose when the babies were born.
Still use the mouth.
No, with an
Still
instrument.
suction.
With an instrument.
That's not the question.
No, he's saying it's pashat because there's no such thing.
The Binyan Tzion says that Metzitza is dafka b'peh. Metzitza is dafka b'peh, says the Binyan Tzion, the Aruch Laner, because of the Rambam. The Rambam says you need achi yotzim mekoymes arachoikim. Says the Binyan Tzion, the Aruch Laner, the only way to be moitzi, the strength, you need dafka with one's mouth b'peh. We'll get shortly to what you mentioned.
So the instruments in question is using it with some sort of mechanical substance as opposed to...
We're going to get to the instrument in a minute, and Moshe, I want to hear your expertise from Atzala, what you say. But let's first, before the concept, we have a team of Atzala over here. We could get the advice. So far we have metzitza b'peh, and the metzitza b'peh says the Aruch Laner and Binyan Tzion. The reason is because the Rambam says makoymes arachoikim.
And he says the way the Rambam knows also because metziza doesn't say motz. Metziza is like a strong a lotion of strongly sucking it out. So therefore, which therefore he says dafka b'peh. There is another way of doing it. Again, the Gemara doesn't say anything about dafka b'peh, but as we mentioned, that's the way how to be mekaymes arachaykim. There's another way to be moitzi the dam, and that's with a tube. And Reb Shamshon Falhorsh in the Tshuva speaks about it. And first he explains you have to get a lot of different mechanism, and you mentioned before that it has to be done properly. You know how to take it out. He speaks about a tube that's very clear, very adjusted properly on the baby as well as to the mouth. There's also a cotton ball inside that doesn't move around. And the reason why it was done is because if these are germs that shouldn't go over. And he says, La'isat Soirach, which he was fighting the reform, and they did not do metzitza b'chlal, or if there's a particular if someone's afraid mepnei sakana, or mepnei shaltoinus, the law they don't let, and this is the only way. Le'esat soirach, he writes that you could go with this tube, and he says if you feel when you're using the tube that it's not doing a proper suction, it's not doing the job, and it's nothing. But if you feel that it's really pulling it out, le'esat soirach, he says you can rely on it. And he was mesupek afal PK, and he was still mesupek if he should really be mater leisat tzarich the tube. And he sent the shaila to others also, but he sent to Rabbi Yitzchak Elchanan, the Kovner Rav. He asked him, and he wrote back. He was maskim leisat tzarich that you could use it. Before going to the tzadsha keneged using the tube, it's interesting to note that Reb Vosner and Shevet HaLevi brings. This is a tshuva that he writes to Rabbi Pertinsky, who was a big moyel. And he writes, I think Rabbi Pertinsky is the one who brings that he heard from Reb Mendel Zaks, the Edom of the Chavetz Chaim, that heard Mipi Kotshe from the Chavetz Chaim that was Misraim, that was bothered. Why? This is what he brings. Why people were so dafka b'metzitza b'peh. This is just, you can look it up inside, Shevet HaLevi, Chelik Yud Simen Kuf Samaches, in the beginning of the Tshuva. Now, so this is, as we mentioned, using the tube le'esat tzorech. They bring a makam lahakal.
You can understand why. Because there was always blood libels and things like that. So people were very sensitive about that.
So you can understand why he was misram. If you make so much, and
why people who are not so concerned about Messiah would fight on that, because then that would.
It says an appearance that it's not healthy. I mean, it's what
Right. Not that it's right, I'm just saying that's maybe why people latch onto that.
Meidach, the ones that very strongly oppose, Reb Shmuel Salant, I have the letter, writes clearly very strongly against using, he calls it shal schuches. I have the letter, anyways, not to use the, what? To use it, the lashon shvefer, maybe shvefer shal. He writes against La Soisa the Piv al Yidei Kliz Chuches. Writes a whole letter against it. Ramosha Feinstein, brought by many, Rami Cohen is Sefer, these articles written when they came out, a whole letter. And Reuven writes from his father, he writes from Ramosha also, Dafka Bepeh, Atkadei Kachdius B'nei Mishpacha, that said that it's a sakana. And Ramosha was very stark, Dafka Bepeh. Reb Vosner, in a few places, Reb Vosner writes that the Chazon Ish, he was once, Reb Vosner was with the Chazon Ish by a bris, and Reb Vosner was getting a little bit, edgy because he knew the moil, and the moil didn't do metzitza b'peh. So the Chazon Ish says, Adarabbi, you should be oimid al mishmer by you, that there's no pirza yet, and people still do it b'peh. Adarabbi, you should make sure only metzitza b'peh. Reb Elyashiv writes clearly dafka b'peh. Reb Nissen Karelitz, Zatzal.
Chaim was a Shita Sefer?
We're going to get a little more into the Chafetz Chaim and Bir Allah. We'll try to speak about it a little bit. Ad Kedei Kach, the Minchas Yitzchak, and they bring from the Satmar Rebbe, and I just saw now this morning my father's safe in Darkei Moshe from Reb Moshe. Reb Moshe writes in a certain scenario, but let's say the baby's in the hospital, and the hospital does not let do metzitza b'peh. So they say, Minchas Yitzchak says it clearly, they write it clearly in the Tshuvas, rather push off the bris, do the bris shaloi bizmana, and do metzitza b'peh, than doing the bris and do metzitza not b'peh. So we have over here metzitza, mepitza b'peh. These are shaila lagabi using this instrument, this tube. A lot of the letters was written, and we have the opportunity, Rabbi Fisher, the Moyel, which spoke over here in the night koil when we learned Hilchas Mila. That was Einikel here in the morning koil. So a lot of the letters was then. I have some of the letters, use different letters and masamata, but that was very stark, came out to do dafka metzitza b'peh. There's one other, I don't know if you want to call it mahalach option that goes into, so to speak, metzitza, and that's by using a svoig, a sponge, which really is technically not metzitza, but let's see for a minute. Using a svoig, the Shail Sechuvas Yad Elazar, a Talmud of the Chassam Sofer, brings b'shem his Rebbe, the Chassam Sofer, that wrote to somebody in a haskama that using a svoig, using a sponge is fine for metzitza.
Putting the sponges between his mouth and the...
No, sponge it up. Just sponge it up. Just like that.
Sponge alone with your mouth.
I don't know, Taka. You just use it and you do the metzitza just as blocking? I think not. I think means that you put it to absorb out the... If you saw... You have to mavar, it's something to mavar, I don't know, but if let's say these I've seen it in the past, if let's say you put a gauze or something and you do a strong metzitza and you moitzi makayim, unless that takes away the pressure, it could be that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about you put a sponge that absorbs the blood.
Does it draw anything out?
It's really just covers. We'll get to what let's in a minute we'll get back. It's very good, Morty. At Kedei Kachi says that you should use the sponge because the sponge is better. To use it on Shabbos, it's less of an issue. On Shabbos, use the sponge. Lamais is like this. This sponge has a lot of tzacha kenega, the ones that oppose. The strongest that came out against it is Reb Sham Shom Folosh and the Tshuva, as well as also a Talmud of the Chassam Sofer and Abadoilach. He brings in the Tshuvas and he says it's a sheker. It never happened. The Chassam Sofer never wrote it. It's not true. It's a sheker. And Abadoilach in a letter he writes very stark. Kvar kibul din al zeh umisase hoise kaparasai. They write that it's not true. Never happened. The Chassam Sofer would have never wrote such a thing to be mater instead of metzitza to use a sponge. What?
Doesn't make sense based on his other writings.
Other Talmidim go a little bit easier. Divrei Yisrael was a Talmud of the Chassam Sofer in Maram Shik, and they say that the Chassam Sofer Taka said it, but it was Hayroah Shah, Mepnei Maisa Shahayan Le'esat Tzorech. And he says they were not matik this tshuva because it's not a tshuva for the general, for the public. So it's not that it's a sheker, but it's not for public use. It was a certain incident why they had to do that mahalach. Rav Vozen at tshuva also brings that when he was in London, if I understand, he said he saw this tshuva. It's interesting. They write that it's a sheker. Maybe he said he saw it. And he saw that a Choshev a Talmud wrote on the side of this, what was written in the Askam. He says, he writes in an Asa Lefarsim. Another angle on this Chassam Sofer that says, that the Yad Allah that brings from the Chassam Sofer about using a sponge is the Minchas Yitzchak and the Be'er Moshe, the Debetzina Rav. that he says if you take a look, when the Chassam Sofer writes they could use a sponge, he says the Chassam Sofer wrote clearly over and over that it's only if it accomplishes lahoitzim em koimas arachaykim, like the Rambam says. And therefore, since the METZIZA says that it doesn't, of course you can't use a sponge. Aruch HaShulchan writes very clearly, Reish Samach Daled, not to use it. Binyan Tzion says you can't use a sponge, it's not moishech. So, to be mesakim,
according to that, some Sefer let you use the tube.
so technically the tube, the ones that oppose a tube is not to be meshana, but if it would do moishech l'makaymes arachaykim, technically you could.
You don't care about changing, you just care that you get in the
That's fine, because Sefer was very much.
Yeah,
He will.
Chadash Asam and Atayri, some Sefer is very against changing. I talk it. You're right. Maybe he would say over there also. Really, the discussion of using the tube was really a discussion le'isat tzorech, for not like in general. So you have to know if the Chassam Sofer would give a blanket heter on that. Good point, Sal. You have to know he's speaking about the sponge, and even if he did, it was le'isat tzorech. But he says it has to accomplish. So just to be masakim, as we spoke, METZIZA is mipnei sakana. These are tzad that it's also lemitzvah. The METZIZA has to accomplish lahoitzim to draw the blood out makaymes arachaykim. And as we saw, the tube maybe accomplishes that. Most Gedolim write clearly not to even go to a tube. And then we went even a step further about the sponge. And just you could take a look. The Bir Aloch and Reish Shin Lamed Aleph and Hilchas Shabbos brings the Binyan Tzion. And then afterwards he brings also the Yad Alaza, which is a Tomol. Rav Oza wants to understand he should have really brought the Yad Alaza first, because the Binyan Tzion argues on him. And we should be zoicha to when we makayim the mitzvah smilu. We should be makayim it ketikuna. Have a good Shabbos.